Hi, everybody in podcast land and also on YouTube. I'm James.
I'm David.
Private Riley reporting for duty, sir.
And this is the Carpool Critics podcast covering Saving Private Ryan.
Spoiler alert! Oh, wait, how do I do it? Army. Spoiler alert, sir!
There's not too many sirs in this movie. It's not like that
Yeah,
Kubrick
no, that's
one.
true. Yeah, they're very informal soldiers. They're all chilling.
This is sir. There's a chain of command.
This is basically like Weekend at Bernie's, but during World War II. Everyone's just like,
That's the
it's a big
sequel.
party.
They have to pretend
And
like
there's some-
Tom Hanks is still alive so that they can keep a mission.
Prop him up.
oh, we can't laugh though,
Marshall
guys.
doesn't feel like talking today. He's hungover.
Oh my gosh.
It's the last joke we're allowed to make about
Yeah,
this
no,
movie.
this is the kind of funny thing. Are we allowed to... I don't know. It's a series. We're going to get serious.
South Park rules, guys. It's been 23 and a half years. You can make fun of it.
As
We've been
much
doing
as,
this
as much as
podcast
you want.
for 23 and a half years.
No, since the event in question.
I see.
It's been more than... Wait. It's been more than 23 years, I think.
1998?
World War II? This movie's from 98?
Yeah.
Wow, that explains why it was the first time I saw entrails.
Yeah, that's pretty
I was a child.
pretty shocking.
Entrails.
I was thinking about this for such
Guts.
Oh,
Trails shaped like the letter N,
no,
right?
I thought... Yeah, I was like, is that a movie?
yeah,
Entrails?
it's the
movie?
planes go and they
No.
do sky letters.
Yes, insides.
For such an iconic movie, there's not that many parodies of this. Like there is, but compared to like The Godfather or Apocalypse Now or something where it's serious subject matter, but it's not as like it just feels wrong to make fun of Saving Private Ryan.
Well, and we can get into this because there's definitely a sense of like reverence in the movie where like it is a huge movie, so you would expect there to be parodies or whatever. But even I'm watching this and I'm writing my notes about it, and I'm like, But the funny thing is, it is a funny movie.
There's good jokes.
It's so funny, but I was like, where can I put in jokes here? I'm still trying to be sensitive.
He wants his mother.
Jeez. Yeah, but we'll get into it. It's very
David, what are you going to give this movie out of 10?
Saving Private Ryan's Fuck.
Oh, no.
Saving Private Ryan's blend of horrific violence and heroic sacrifice, best exemplified by the best 23 minutes ever put to film, make it the most powerful, if not the purest war film ever.
Wow.
9.4.
Woo.
That's very high. Is that
Nice.
your highest rated movie on this podcast?
I think Blade Runner 2049 is higher.
Where'd you put?
9.7, something like that.
Okay, wow.
Ballpark?
Ballpark.
My slogan is, what is a man worth? Is he worth as many enemies as he can kill? As many lives he can save by giving his own? Saving Private Ryan explores this question in one of the most heartfelt and genuine American war propaganda films to ever hit the screen. American war propaganda? What do you mean? Shut up. I'm giving it an 8.75 out of 10. I love this movie.
Hell yeah.
I don't really think it's that propagandist.
Well, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, let's do that. Saving Private Ryan might be the best World War II movie ever. But can you have too much of a good thing? Yes. 25 minutes too much.
Oh.
8.5 out of 10. Movie's sick.
Really?
8.5 is a high rating.
So that 0.5 down from a 9 is like the extra 25 minutes?
I don't know. I just think by the time it gets to like the final battle, we're like, okay, we have Ryan. Now we're just gonna have another 6 fight scene for another half an hour. I'm kind of like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was great. It's well done, and lots of cool character moments happen. And we're gonna talk about those right after this message from Carpool Critics is supported by Wait, shit. Shaving Ryan's Privates is supported by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels, including the greatest ball hair trimmer on the planet, the Lawnmower 3.0. And you can trim more than just your balls, Riley.
Oh.
I use it on my nipples, my face.
Really?
Hell, take the guard off and get up the nose.
Oh, my.
Yeah, well, you're a dad now.
How big is your nostril?
It's not how big my nostril is. It's how hairy it is on the inside. You gotta work the angles.
Right.
You can get 20% off right now and free shipping in this crazy world with code CARPOOL at manscaped.com. And if you're gonna buy this stuff, guys, buy with our link, you know?
Please. It really helps us out.
Why not help us?
Yeah.
You like us, that's why you're here.
There's a lot of people who need help in the world, but you're here listening to us, so we get dibs probably.
We're also brought to you by Private Internet Access VPN. PIA helps you hide your true IP address so you can bypass geo restrictions and censorship. You can connect up to 5 devices at once, and it includes an internet kill switch. Frag out! If your VPN gets disconnected involuntarily. PIA is available for Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even has a god dang Chrome extension. So check it out at lmg.gg/carpoolpia.
You cut off my grenade explosion.
I didn't know it was gonna explode.
Well, you gotta wait for the delivery.
Well, you usually got some time. You throw
no,
it.
it's true. It's true.
Okay.
I was trying to make it quick. Anyways.
Give us the rundown of what goes down in this movie.
Okay,
Riley.
guys. During the Allied invasion of Normandy in 1944, Captain Miller is tasked with finding Private James Francis Ryan and sending him home after all 3 of his brothers are killed in action. Miller leads the way through Nazi-occupied territory with 8 of his men who question why they should risk their lives to save one man. When they finally find Private Ryan, he refuses to leave his post, defending a bridge of key strategic value. Miller's men stay, helping to hold off a German assault until reinforcements arrive. Miller and most of his men are eventually killed, but Ryan survives, returns to America, and does his best to earn the men's sacrifice by starting and becoming the patriarch of a perfect white American family. The moral of the story is America.
Fuck yeah!
Have lots of hot daughters.
Now I know there's a lot of people listening and they're like, hey, you're woke, this is too critical. I love this movie, okay? I just have to find a place to make jokes. And that's where you make the jokes about the American war propaganda,
Well, that's
okay?
honestly, if they had fit in anything other than just imagery of the family he created, it would have been so brutal and spoon-fed. If he showed up to that tombstone and was like, well, my son invented plastic, or
like if he did earn it by like winning a Nobel Prize or something.
His daughters all run different charities for veterans or something.
It's enough that they're just good looking, and he had a lot of them.
Yeah, it is a really interesting beginning to the movie though. It's just like him walking along and just like, oh, look at this perfect family.
Well, I think that's both the beginning and the end of this movie are the most criticized parts because like kind of the most schmaltzy. It's like, okay, I get what you're doing, but it's also the most forgettable. Everyone thinks that the opening scene of this movie is D-Day.
Yeah,
but there's like 5 minutes before that, like not 5, but like 3.5.
I kind of forgot.
Yeah, totally. I forget too
because that's the part you remember. You don't remember.
Boy, do you remember
the old geezer. No offense.
He looks like Matt Damon though.
Yeah, I was like, wow, this is really well cast.
Well, I was totally tricked though, and I think it's intentional. Like,
oh, totally.
You're supposed to think it's Miller, right? Because it cuts from him to Miller. It doesn't do a match frame at the beginning though, right? It like by that I mean it doesn't go from like the old man's eyes to a young man's eyes.
No.
It does that at the end with a morph, but at the beginning it just cuts to like Miller's shaking hand or something like that.
Yeah, I wish that cut was a little bit stronger. Like, I think it would have been cool if it went from eyes to eyes or something like that.
I fully expected that.
And I really don't like the morph cut at the end when it goes from young Matt Damon to old man Matt Damon. That's not Matt Damon, but is Matt Damon.
Why don't you like it?
It's just a cheap effect.
Yeah,
it really didn't age well. And like now it's just
I thought
like
it looked okay.
It's okay. It's just like a default effect in Premiere now, and so I've seen it lots.
We have the capability to do it
totally.
easily,
And I mean, in
that
1998,
Michael Jackson movie, it doesn't matter if you're black or white. They use it to great effect in that music video.
And it's not that it's inherently bad.
Movie. Music video.
Music movie. But yeah, I found that particular effect didn't work.
I think if they had done a match frame or a match cut from Old Man Eyes to Miller's eyes at the beginning of the movie, that would have been a cheap shot. And I actually don't think they should have done that. I agree that they did not do that.
I feel like it's kind of cheap that they did that at all. Like, why even make us think that? I don't know. It was just kind of weird.
Well,
like,
it does serve a purpose.
It makes us think that the old man is Miller.
Yes.
But why make us think
well,
that?
because
It's
otherwise...
just kind of a silly twist for no reason.
The framing device in this movie is that he's remembering when he's at the gravestone, right? We're not watching the story in real time. We're watching it through his memory.
Right.
And so, therefore, if you think that that's Miller, then you watch this whole movie thinking, well, we know Miller survives. There's no way he's going to die. He's going to survive. I know he survives because he's recounting the story. He's telling us the story in the framing device. So if we think that Miller must survive, then when he dies, we're like, what? He can't die. And so it's a bit of a twist, actually. I think it's well done.
I guess so. I mean, I didn't really have like a big thing to complain about that, but at the end, I think especially because I knew that the guy was Matt Damon off the bat, I was like, oh, that's Private Ryan.
I didn't.
Oh, no?
No. I saw this movie in 98.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, probably too young.
I think I've seen this movie a few times more than average for me, which is probably like 2 times.
Yeah.
And so this was probably number 3. But I definitely, because he looks so much like Matt Damon.
That's
I think
crazy.
that was really what triggered my memory is like, whoa, did they is this like Avengers advanced aging CGI
Makeup
type thing,
yeah.
like way before its time? Like, did they just make Matt Damon look super old?
That's why I don't mind the morph at the end, because it doesn't have to morph that much. It seems pretty realistic. What I will say about the whole switcheroo that they do is it does feel a little bit cheap, because Ryan, the old man version, is recounting a story that he wasn't at.
Yeah.
So it switches to his memory telling the story of D-Day he wasn't they're at
And
D-Day,
I
so
think
that's kind of weird.
That's why it bothers me, I think, because it's like we're going into his eyes, and then we switch to Miller, and it's like, why did we go to his eyes? What's the point of that? He's like, I'm remembering. He got memory transference.
But he also took place part in the invasion, and he's probably heard 1,000 different veterans telling the story, so you can imagine it. I think within the context of the veterans' kind of memory of what that day would have been like, I think it works fine for me.
Especially since the D-Day part's not that historically accurate anyway, so.
It's not
Is it
as
not?
bad. Do you know who says that it wasn't historically accurate and did a whole campaign about it? Harvey Weinstein. So if you don't like this movie because it's not historically accurate, you're just like Harvey Weinstein.
Why did he care so much?
So the year that this came out, Thin Red Line and Shakespeare in Love came out. And so Harvey Weinstein did a big campaign against...
A smear campaign.
A smear campaign against Saving Private Ryan about how inaccurate this movie was so that Shakespeare in Love could actually win Best Picture that year.
Which it did?
It won. One of the most okay movies ever that hasn't aged well at all.
In case we needed another reason to hate Harvey Weinstein.
That's insane.
Yeah. And it's so like he did all these things about like historical inaccuracies, but if you go back, this is actually a fairly well researched movie. There's lots in this that's like maybe a little bit exaggerated, or like certain ideas are a little too kind to what American military would do. But in general, like a lot of the details are right because he started this movie wanting to make like a oorah movie.
Yeah.
But the more he interviewed veterans and the more he got information, he's like, no, I want to make this like real.
It's unflinching. I think what I remember most about watching this as a kid was like all of the... You know, like, did you guys go through like a World War II phase where I did, where I was just like obsessed with all of like the guns and the tanks and the planes and
I think
like
the whole world did.
Yeah.
Like when Call of Duty, World War like 1 and 2 and Medal of Honor and stuff.
Myself, not really.
Oh no,
not really. No.
When I had the subtitles on, and I feel like you probably don't catch a ton of this stuff when you're not watching with subtitles, but like there are so many times where they're just like listing a bunch of like army equipment.
There's a lot of jargon.
Like, yeah, we got hit hard from the 88s, and like those are P-51 tank busters and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, I don't think it's called the It's called the P-51.
That's the plane.
Yeah, well, that's actually
No,
that's one of the inaccuracies. Is that plane is crappy
It's
at air
not
to
a tank
ground,
buster,
so it's
yeah.
specifically not a tank
I
buster.
actually remember that because he's like, "There's a tank busters, P-51s." And I was like, "Those aren't. They're not bombers. They're
they're fighters.
They're fighters."
Yeah, so that's where it's kind of iffy because on the one hand, I was gonna praise this movie for having so much jargon, but it never bogging the movie down. Where I was like, if I was a World War II nut, I would be so happy that all this stuff is in here, but it doesn't affect the layman at all. But then if you actually are a nut, it actually kind of sucks. There's a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they got enough right though.
I mean, and there's going to be nitpicks that are just, to me, unreasonable. Like, oh, this paratrooper has black boots, where all the army had brown boots at that time. They didn't have black boots until like Vietnam or something like that.
Whatever.
Like, who cares?
Who cares?
And then there's the practicalities of just like what you're able to source when you're creating a movie.
Man, I wish that I looked more into like the accuracies and inaccuracies of this movie in terms of that stuff, because all I remember is watching it and being like, oh, cool. Talking about Shermans and Panzers and blah, 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 and I know what those mean.
This movie is definitely more experiential than informational, but there's like lots of World War II historians that say that this is the best World War II movie.
I think it's the best depiction of combat,
right?
But I don't think it's to the T what happened that day. Actually, on Reddit, if you go to r/askhistorians, there are several threads about this movie that are in great detail that you can check out if you want to learn that stuff. But in particular, I think the thing that's probably the most egregious is that company of Rangers kind of had a plan A and a plan B on the day. And in the movie, you see them mostly adhering to plan A, but in real life, they did plan B.
Wait a second. I didn't even think about this at all. Is this based on a true story?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
It's based on the broad...
Omaha Beach.
It's based on the broad strokes of a few different stories kind of combined.
There was actually a mission to go save the fourth brother of
well, I don't know about that. I know there was different
I'm not talking about that.
Oh.
There was.
No, I know you weren't talking. I know D-Day happened, but I'm saying the mission.
The idea of brothers that died and them pulling one off the front line to return home, that happened. It was 4 brothers, 2 died, and the third one went missing, and they thought he was dead, so they went and got the third one. Turned out he was just a POW. He escaped eventually. So that's true, but this scenario of like risking 8 men's lives.
But did they go to great extent and cost?
No, they found him. They're like, hey, bring him back. And he's like,
okay.
Oh,
he's just chilling in the mess hall.
Yeah, no. This idea of 8 people having to risk their lives for one dude is one of my big questions, and I don't want to get into that right away, but I definitely have that
We
question.
will cross that bridge.
The movie completely loses nothing for me from being a fictional account, because I think from the get-go I thought it was fictional anyways. So if it's not like right to the letter, of what actually happened in this so-called mission, then yeah, it's fine.
I'm happy with it. I mean, there's other weird things like at the beginning of the movie or at the beginning of the invasion. There's basically silence. They're in the boat, on their way, right? But by that point, you would have heard the naval, artillery support and all the guns, and there's planes overhead and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
But this just makes it
That's
more
fine.
personal. Who cares?
Yeah.
What I like about it is right from the beginning, you're like, oh, this is this kind of war movie that doesn't really glorify it. It's more like war is hell. Right from the beginning, we see hands shaking, people puking right away.
It's rough. I when you guys were like, oh, we're doing this movie this week, I said to Lauren, I'm like, they want to do Saving Private Ryan. And, we're so tired. We just had a baby. And I'm like, are you up for this? And she's like, yeah, okay. And then we started watching it, and she's like, wow, oh, this is what this is.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe having the baby kind of shell-shocked us, so we were just fine. We were like, oh, this is nothing.
Shell-shocked.
Yeah. I started this movie late last night, and my girlfriend watched the first part, and she just sobs the whole time. It's like one of those movies that's
wow.
really visceral and affects on a deep level.
Yeah.
And when you can connect with what these real people had to go through, and this is a movie version of it, but real people had to do this. It's really
Oh,
affecting.
yeah.
It's
You're watching
nuts.
this just being like, wow, I don't want to be there. Fuck that.
Yeah.
That sucks. You can't communicate? Wait, how can this get any worse? Oh, now someone's asking him what to do. Can you imagine?
Oh, my gosh.
It's so brutal. And then someone's like, sir, where do I go? You're like, man, I just
Oh,
want to
my
curl up in a
God.
One thing
ball.
I really like in this movie is that it rarely criticizes people who are afraid. It's it's not shown as weakness. It's shown as humanity. And when they're afraid, when they're having a moment,
You think that's true of Upham? At the end?
No,
where-
he's the one character that I think I have questions again about his arc. I don't really think I dig what they did with him, but I think it brings up a bunch of challenging questions. And when I went into this movie, I don't remember being there's kind of hard to deal with themes in this. I just remember the movie, the graphics being hard to deal with.
Yeah.
But there's questions that this movie asks and kind of provides answers that I'm like, that's not a good answer.
Oh,
but
really?
But in a this is interesting kind of way.
Okay.
Is there room for kindness on the battlefield?
Yeah.
And this movie says no. There is no room for kindness on the battlefield.
It is a bit of a weird. Well, I don't know if it tells you that those guys should have killed the guy or whatever.
So the character Upham we're talking about is the one dude who gets added to the squad who's just not an absolute vet. All of these guys,
He's a translator.
They survived D-Day and Omaha Beach, and they're badass motherfuckers just by virtue of having survived, or lucky as hell. But then this translator dude, Upham, has only been to basic. He can speak French and German, so that's why he's going. And his character arc, or his little story, basically is he wants to see if he can be a real soldier. And then, but
he's writing a book about the bonds of brotherhood developed in war.
But the fact that he's not jaded yet or cynical
Right.
means he's kind of has more humanity than other people. So then when they encounter a German soldier who they take prisoner, everybody wants to just kill this guy. He's like, that's not allowed. And then eventually that guy gets set free. Then later on in the movie, that German is among other attackers that they're facing off against. So he's like, damn it, we set him free, and now he's here. He's the one who kills Miller.
He kills Miller. Yeah. So I don't think that that's the movie telling us that obviously they should have killed the guy. I think they're saying that war sucks and that you can try your best and it's not going to be good enough.
Yeah, for sure. I think that if they had left it at that, I would be more on board with that open-ended question. But then they kind of answer it with a more closed answer when he kills that German after. When he after he's seen all this stuff, he has his I'm a badass now moment. He makes all the Germans that are running away surrender, which is his most heroic moment.
Yeah.
And then he shoots the German, and it's
I think I'm with you a bit on the arc being unsatisfying. His arc is very confusing. I would have liked a bit more closure for him, because he has this clear objective. He's trying to learn about brotherhood. He says that to the guys, and it's kind of funny because it's even if he's not, he kind of joins the brotherhood at the end. Mellish brings him in by telling him what foobar means finally, and so he's observing these brothers in arms and their deal. So it would have been nice to kind of get to a endpoint where he's all right, I've learned this and this is what I'm going to do with it. But then I'm with you. It's confusing. He cowers. It shows him as a coward, and then later he goes back on his noble instinct to save the guy and just kills him.
Yeah.
What are we supposed to...
I think that's supposed to redeem him. So Mellish is the guy in this movie.
I don't think he needed redeeming.
Well, he looks pretty bad when Mellish is fighting hand to hand with another German in an agonizing battle, like where the knife gets slowly sunken into his chest and Mellish dies.
He's like,
meanwhile, Upham is walking up the stairs to intervene, like such a wuss, like just get in there already. And he can't bring himself to rush into the scene and make a difference. Instead, he crumples and cowers in his own shame and cries and falls apart on the stairs.
That sequence is excellent. Like, I love that he's willing to put himself in the line of danger. Like, he's going to get this ammo, and he actually does a pretty good job, like crossing the line of fire, getting back. But as soon as he needs to be the one pulling the trigger, he just doesn't have that in him. Mm-hmm. And I like that dynamic of like morality and value that the movie's proposing, that he's willing to be brave when it comes to himself, but he's not able to kill that guy.
It's like the trolley car problem. You know, that thought experiment where like most people say that they would pull a lever to reroute a train so the train doesn't kill 5 people or something.
Right.
But
when you're actually there,
if you have to like push, they use an example of a fat man on the bridge to block the train. Yeah. If you have to push the fat man off the bridge, most people say they wouldn't do that because that's active. Yeah. You know, you actually have to put your hands on something.
Yeah. And I think that's partially why I didn't judge him in that moment. Like, I think I saw him cowering and I was just like, oh, of course. This is they show all the soldiers who are like badasses and like going crazy, killing Germans, and it's no problem. And then when they are dying in the dirt, they all cry to their mom. They're all crying "mama" as their guts are spilling onto the grass. It's so like I'm seeing him cowering on the stairs, and I'm just like, of course. Like obviously, it would have been better if he went up and saved his friend, but at the same time, I again looked at it as just like a portrait instead of kind of like a,
heroic arc.
Yeah, or anything.
Totally.
Showing you what should happen.
So you don't think it necessitates redemption?
I don't think so. I think that anyone in that scenario who breaks down and can't cope, I don't think that they could be blamed for that. I think that war is not a situation that you expect people to behave properly in. Mm-hmm. And I think that, the Army has all of these strict guidelines and all of this stuff because they know that once you're out there, if you don't have structure, if you don't have a clear chain of command and soldiers in arms with you, like, it's just chaos. Mm-hmm. It's literally pure chaos.
Totally.
And so I don't blame somebody for just having a mental breakdown.
Totally. I think one of the things the movie does really well in that regard is it shows how different people deal with D-Day. Where after they've kind of gotten the beach, they've taken the bunker, you see 3 different takes on like how you deal with this. The first one is those 2 dudes where the Czech people come out and they're like, hey, we're not German. We didn't kill anybody. Like, hey, don't shoot us. And then they shoot him. And then they make a joke like, what was he saying? What was he saying? He was cleaning up for dinner. And so like, okay, there's that level of like, they're at the enemy and we have to kill them.
And that's a setup for Miller later.
Totally.
Because Miller has the chance later to play by the rules and take someone as a prisoner rather than killing that person. This is the German we're talking about.
Right.
And instead, because Miller's so jaded and cynical and losing it by that point in the movie, it's a question for him. Whereas there was no question at the beginning of the movie, he thought that was wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and
continue.
then the second one is Vin Diesel and the Jewish character with the mustache when Mellish.
Adam Goldberg.
From Dazed and Confused.
Yeah.
Fubar.
They hand him the Hitler Youth knife, and he's kind of has like this like haha, and then he like breaks down sobbing, and you see that side, like this intense trauma that he's like dealing with immediately. But then you see the second in command. I can't remember what's his name.
Hold on, can we dwell on that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. He gets this. It's like a joke. Hey, look, a Hitler Youth knife, and he's just holding it, and they've just won. He survived.
Yeah.
You could say it's a cause for celebration, but no, war is hell. There are no winners, and he just breaks down there.
Totally. And like Vin Diesel's there, and he doesn't really know what to do. He's like has this like moment of like compassion, but
it's a great movie moment because I actually in the audience even I was kind of questioning like, why is this happening right now?
Totally.
You don't usually see that.
Well, and it's also because he's Jewish, right? And he's just like thinking like of all his people who have been exterminated and killed by the Germans, and he's survived. Here he is like a
Well, and Hitler
one
Youth
against
in
them.
particular is such
Yeah.
a nasty.
So insidious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then the third one.
I question in that moment where it's like, was he in Germany? Like, did he escape or something? He's clearly American.
Yeah, I don't think so.
just
But I
that-
think it's
yeah.
just like the whole weight of it would be
Yeah.
fucking overwhelming. But the third one is the second in command to Miller.
Horvath, Sergeant Horvath, played by Tom
who,
Sizemore.
who very calmly just collects the sand on the beach, puts it in
Yeah.
this tin named like Omaha or France or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and puts it with his other tins like Italy, Africa, like.
Yeah.
And I love how you see kind of like how these different people are going to react to this awful trauma, and
You know, I'm really-
stuck
I
with
actually
me.
thought the sand thing was hokey.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I don't. Okay, I have jars of sand from places I've been to. It's a cool,
Lame.
It's a cool thing to do. I totally don't.
It's a really cool thing to
It's
do, guys.
fine. I'm
'cause
not
I do
against it. I'm not against him
Yeah.
doing that. I just don't think it's realistic for someone to have like a whole purse full of sand.
That's pretty
when
weird.
they're on goddamn D-Day, like
yeah.
fighting for your life. Like you want that extra weight. I just don't. It just didn't seem
Yeah.
realistic
I think
to me.
there's a combo where I think that it's silly that he still has the Italy and the Africa sand as well, because like, is he really
He would've
carrying that with him
dropped that
everywhere?
back
He
at
was
the
like,
barracks or
okay,
whatever.
but
And we would have got it if you just wrote France on it. We would have understood that. There's probably
100%.
other ones.
But I like the idea where it made me be like, okay, like he's not. I don't think he's doing it for himself. He's doing it like he thinks of his kids, and he's like, I want to like bring them something, and like this is the souvenir I can bring them. I can't
Yeah,
bring them a
maybe.
gun. I can't bring them like a German helmet, but like I can bring them.
I
this
thought
thing.
it was a setup. Like it seemed like the type of film language where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna see this sand again. This is gonna be a setup for some payoff later in the movie, but it isn't. And I wondered, maybe it's serving the purpose that you're describing, David, or maybe it's just trying to show that this guy's like a vet. He's been around.
Yeah.
He's a sergeant.
I think that's the main.
I think
one.
it's multiple purposes though, and I think it works.
well, that's
in
what
that
you
way.
try to do with movie writing.
Yeah.
Be efficient.
I
like
honestly, I was a bit confused by that sequence of scenes because I was like, "What's the point of this?" But I think you just explained it to me that like it's kind of just some vignettes to give a little slice of life for these people who just made it through this horrible thing.
Yeah, I don't think this movie takes a bold stance, being like, hey, like every soldier is gray morality. I think there's like it leans more on the side of like veterans are heroes, but I think that's a good moment of like, no, like there's a little bit of moral gray in
Yeah.
war, and like even American soldiers aren't all heroes.
No, I love that. I love that morally. Well, it's morally complex. It's like you are over here. You are fighting for something good. You're fighting for freedom. You're fighting against evil, but war does things to men and people in general.
Totally.
And it's horrible. So I think that's again another reason why I don't look at any of the things that people do in this movie as like real judgment. I'm just like you are doing the thing that makes the most sense to you in this moment where you're trying to not get your head shot off.
So you're saying that people don't have free will.
Well, that's a question for another time.
Can we talk about the D-Day sequence for a bit? Because like that took most of the filming days. It took 25 out of 59 filming days. It took like
25 days.
the largest chunk of the film budget. Like they had to make 300 costumes for this. Like that was the big part of this movie, and I think it's the best part of
Oh,
this
man.
movie.
It's definitely the most iconic. That's
yeah.
what you'll all remember. My wife was like, "Is the whole movie like this?"
Can you imagine? That would
Well,
be so. I think what this
rough.
sequence really shows is a master understanding of like inhaling and exhaling in filmmaking. Like the pacing of that sequence is like a symphony where when you're on the U-boats, it's these like long takes. It's still shaky. And then the first explosion, it's like immediately we're raising the tempo and we're like raising the intensity. And then the door opens and then bam, cut. People are dying everywhere. But then immediately we get another breather. We go underwater. And although it's like a really dark moment where you're seeing these soldiers unable to get out of their gear and they're drowning and the bullets come down, which can't happen. That's not physically possible. Bullets cannot go in water.
Every time in a movie they do this.
Yeah, but that's not important.
Well,
You
no,
get
they go down like a foot and a half, and then they
Yeah,
they
but they
do
go-
kill somebody. There's a bullet underwater that goes
yeah.
through and kills somebody. And my Larissa was like, I thought that didn't happen.
You can't do that.
And I was like, well, those are high caliber.
They didn't have MythBusters.
They're
back
high
then.
caliber machines though. Could it?
1998.
Those
Huh?
are like
Oh, maybe if,
high caliber
if
machine
it's the if it's like the
50
the,
cals. I don't know if
the
they're 50
turrets.
cals back then, but
Yeah, maybe.
But then we're underwater. The pacing takes another breath. We get a chance to exhale, and then like the camera does this crazy thing of like out of the water, in the water, out of the water, in the water, and again we're like amping the
like a
rhythm.
GoPro.
That's what they used. A little few people
They
know.
used GoPros.
The first GoPro was used.
Steven Spielberg had the first ones.
But then we're into the most intense part of the movie where people are friggin' dying, like their guts are hanging out. Like it's awful. But because the movie has gone from like this slower pace with the intro into the U-boat, into the water, it's prepared us for this crazy rhythm of filmmaking, and we can accept it. And it's overwhelming in the right way, not in the information overload way.
Right.
And it's like not many filmmakers could do it as well as Steven Spielberg did it. It's incredible.
It's completely immersive. I think one of my notes that I wrote was that I'm like, this movie is one of the best movies that I've seen that makes you really feel as if you are in this war, as if you're in this battle. There are bullets whizzing over your head. Your friend is dying right next to you. You have a wound that you don't know is gonna kill you or not. It's just like it honestly feels like a video game where I'm just like in it. Like,
I mean, Steven Spielberg would go on to make Medal of Honor after this, and it's
did he?
Yeah,
What do you mean?
He created Medal. Well, he's like the head honcho for Medal of Honor.
Really?
Yeah, they came to him and they're like, make a video game, and he's like, I want to make a World War II video game.
Oh, that's so funny.
And then they made Call of Duty, which was way better.
I had no idea.
And then they kept making them, and then they stopped.
I love the early Medal of Honor games.
I love the early Call of Duty games.
Oh,
They're so good.
I played like Medal of Honor on GameCube or something.
They were good.
Anyways,
they were pretty
back
sweet.
to this scene.
I like all the different moments that they tried to put into this scene, and sometimes they have to slow it down so that you can see all those moments.
Yeah.
Like there's a scene, or there's a section of it where Miller is just leaning against a sandbag or something, like breathing, like he just can't take it all. He's like shocked. And so everything's kind of slow motion, and that's the part where you see that guy wandering around looking for his limbs, and he picks up his own arm.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I
Buddy,
love-
just chuck it in the water, it's done.
They do something really smart with the audio design, where even in the most intense parts, where like another movie would just raise the volume, raise the craziness, they bring it down. And when Miller's running up to the first level of the hill, and you're following the soldier, so it's this shaky behind the soldier shots. But instead of having it be like footsteps and gunfire and all this, it's actually just a really intimate breathing and grunting of Tom Hanks. It's just like, and it totally
Stop
put.
I just picture Tom Hanks' wife being like, no.
But it places you in that scene in such an intense, intimate way, where I think what another filmmaker would have chosen wouldn't have worked as effectively at totally making it like so visceral.
Man.
It's basically 1 degree of separation away from being first person view.
Oh, totally. It's like a first person sequence.
It's first
without it
person
being too
audio.
much.
David, what did you think about the like low frame rate sections? Because I wrote down that those were horrible. I didn't
They're
like
a
those at
little
all.
dated for sure, and there's a few things that they do in this movie that I don't love. Before we actually watched it, James was like, "Hey, keep an eye out for this kind of video artifact." When there's like fire, it goes across the whole line, and I was like, I wonder if it's like the file or whatever that was broken. But it's just what they did is they actually took the protective coating off the lens, which is a filter and it prevents crazy refractions and reflections that cause like crazy blooming and all this
Polarized.
stuff.
So this stuff that I noticed was actually intentional part of the movie?
Yeah, and so I'm not sure. So there's a filter you can put on a lens that makes like this vertical stretching of flaring, and that's like a sci-fi effect that they do. So they might have added that on top, but removing that coating would provide that, where like the fire is stretched
Did you have
to a full
that in
screen.
the copy you watched, Riley? So what it looks like is, it was in 2 scenes, one at the beginning and one at the end. And like in one of them, there were some fires burning in the background, like in a barrel or something. And then the orange from that fire was like extruded in these like perfect vertical lines up the screen.
I didn't notice that.
And then there's another scene like in the foreground. It was just like the guy's coat or something.
I think if I did see it, I might have just thought it was like a lens flare or something.
Yeah,
No, it's like way worse than that though.
No,
I was like, something's broken in this movie.
Maybe your copy was broken, but the fire is extruded because of those, like the coating being removed, and it totally just reflects in the lens and creates this really strong vertical lines.
Well, sure, but I'm just saying it's not like a J.J. Abrams lens flare that's like, oh, that's a little whoo for like 1 second and it's gone. This
That
is
was
like 10 solid seconds of like, what is this?
That was actually a special type of fire weapon used by the Germans. Is a Lincoln.
Man, how about those flamethrower guys?
Cool.
I was like, that would be cool to be that guy. And I was like, no, no,
When he
actually.
explodes and Tom Hanks is in the close-up and the blood just splatters on his
Oh,
face.
man.
Just imagine like being on D-Day and then you're also carrying a tank. Like carrying tanks around sucks.
Jeez Louise.
But then it feels so badass when they get to the bunker and
Yeah.
like you finally see the one flamethrower guy actually get to do what he was meant to do, and it just freaking
oh man, it's
goes
awesome.
up
Such
in
an
flames.
intimidating weapon
It's
too.
such a release too after the hell of moving up the beach to have to see them finally like destroy
Oh
that
my gosh.
bunker.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
bunker. It was bonkers.
Finally, we get to murder people. Yeah.
Do you know what moment doesn't work for me in the D-Day sequence though? Is the sniper moment when he
Oh, really?
the first time. I like that Tom Hanks is like, okay,
Jackson?
he has a plan. We're gonna get him there. He'll take the sniper shot. I trust this guy. That all works for me. It's the first time he's like, Lord, protect me. Give me the power to do the sniper shot.
Yeah.
I just find like
Lord sniper power activate.
Yeah. I just find that
Charge up the Bible.
that time in particular. Later in the movie, he does it again, and that's kind of his thing. He's like the religious one. That's fine for me as a shtick, but that time in particular felt like really 80s action movie to me. As like I could see Arnold being like, Lord, give me the power to snap this man.
Arnold.
Saving Private Ryan, except Arnold is the sniper.
I would love that.
See, I wrote this down. The little Christian boy in me, first time I saw this movie, I was like, hell yeah.
I thought it was so
pun intended. He was like, give me the strength to vanquish my enemies, oh Lord. I'm like, hell yeah. That was like, fuck. That was awesome.
And I love that in the later part of the movie when he's at the top of the tower and he's having his like badass moment where he's just like, boom, dude. Dead.
Yeah,
dead.
yeah.
And he's like doing the prayer. Like that works for me. And I'm like, sure, this is like coming full circle.
What's different about the first one is he says his own prayer, and then the camera actually cuts to two different scenes of like, or shots of other extras also praying while they're in battle. Like there's a guy with a rosary or something like that.
Yeah.
And we've never seen these people before. And then it cuts back to Jackson completing his prayer and then making the shot. So I was like, why did Spielberg choose to do that? Why did he involve these other characters in this moment?
For me, it served as kind of like, you know, one of those vignettes that David was kind of saying, like we on the beach, we're not with Miller 100% of the time. A few times it just kind of breaks off to like show somebody and, you know, who lost a limb or whatever, or somebody getting shot, and it just kind of is like attempting to give us this overall picture of life during the D-Day invasion. And I think that him doing that the Bible sniper shot, I think was an excuse, or not an excuse, that sounds negative, but I think that he took that opportunity to show the fullness of, you know, not fullness, but showed some of the ways that religious beliefs and ways of life kind of played into this moment.
Yeah, and I think it also serves to maybe say, hey, Jackson isn't like a religious zealot weirdo. He's not a one-off. There's lots of people who are doing what he is going to do in this movie. It's
perhaps serves as a moment to tell us that, all right, he won in this moment, but don't necessarily think that he does have any sort of special power.
Oh, he does.
Okay, there's
he does,
another
though.
What? Well, he
gets killed by
in the
a
end.
tank. Takes a tank to take him down.
No, he's extremely talented, but I think what that's showing us in that moment is not that, you know, I don't think that Saving Private Ryan has metaphysics where if you believe hard enough, you're the best sniper.
Saving Private Ryan, the second Avenger.
Yeah, but
Jackson is also the one moment in this movie where I was like, ew, at the exposition. Where he's like, it's right after that actually, he's like kind of talking himself up. He's basically saying to the audience, I'm the sniper and I'm really good and this is what I can do.
Is that the scene where they're like all walking through the field or whatever and Upham just joined them and they're talking about the mission and all that? He's like, so the way I see it, God turned me into a marvelous instrument of warfare.
Here's my character bio.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay.
I don't know. I like that. They were all kind of, that whole sequence kind of served as sort of like an exposition to get us, helping us get to know the characters.
Yeah, but everybody was acquainted through dialogue. Everyone else, there was banter, and that's how we learned who they were and what their relationships were. But he's the only one who's like, here's my thing.
Well, I don't know. I think it didn't bother me that much because we had already seen what his thing was. He was like the Christian sniper guy. You know, I don't know.
I think some of those conversations really work for me, especially when it's like a walking through a camp and there's like hundreds of soldiers and it's this huge scale.
Yeah.
And there's so much visual spectacle that I'm like half paying attention to what they're saying. I'm not that worried about like the details of it. But when it's just, that 8 of them walking through a field, I found some of that dialogue kind of like, okay, it's okay.
This movie really made me want to watch Band of Brothers again because of that reason that you were saying. Like they're going through all of these different theaters of the war. Like they meet up with the paratroopers and then they meet the the company that they're going through the town and stuff. I was just like, did you guys watch Band of Brothers?
Oh yeah,
that's a Spielberg show, right?
Yep.
A TV show.
I think Tom Hanks produced it or something.
And Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. It was basically like Saving Private Ryan, the show.
And I think because of that, there's more time to dwell with those characters, and they feel so much more grounded in reality. They're not like ideas of something.
Let's go back to D-Day, though, because I actually have some questions. This one's a production design question. Could the water be that bloody?
So according
to the ocean, there's waves, right?
So according to the stories of D-Day, the blood did run red. But those retellings...
The water ran red with blood.
With blood.
Okay.
And that wasn't enough information for me, so I did the math. So they used, in this movie...
You did the math?
I did the math. Of
The
how much,
volume of the ocean.
No, so in this movie, they used 40 gallons of fake blood, which is like more than any other movie. So 40 gallons, 40 barrels of 42 gallons is like 1,500 gallons of blood.
You lost me.
Humans have like 1.2 to 1.5 gallons. So like if 1,000 people died and they bled out, that's like that much blood. But it's a pretty contained area, and the water's pushing the blood towards the beach. But and so between the fact that like that's not that many humans dying, plus the stories saying that, I think that was probably true.
Yeah, you guys talked about the inaccuracy of this scene, and one big question for me is the setup of the actual beach. Like, was the beach that short? It seemed really short.
So if
It
you
was
look,
8K.
What'd you call me?
It was 8 kilometers.
well,
Okay.
Omaha Beach in particular.
Yeah, I think so.
Like from the turrets to the
Oh,
shore?
The depth of it that way, I think,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like 4 or something.
Kilometers.
Yeah, and
because
this
it looked
fight-
like 500 meters.
And the fight took many hours, but
Yeah.
it's all condensed to give you the emotional beats.
The thing
into
that I
20
have,
minutes.
though, is like, they have these conversations, they get to cover, and then they like they're in cover, they're safe, and they're kind of talking, what should we do now? We got to run over there. But then sometimes it goes to like an over-the-shoulder view from the Germans' perspective,
Yeah.
looking down the beach
Yes.
at them. And from that perspective, there is nowhere to hide.
know.
Nowhere. I'm like, where are these conversations occurring?
It really bothered me.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, first of all, if they just at a sprint, it seems like they could get to the sand, barrier or whatever in like 20 seconds. And B, did I say one or I don't know. And secondly, it looked like the German turret guys could just gun down everyone, no problem.
Well, I
was
guess
like,
from their perspective, you're not going to be able to see what they can't see, right? So if there's anything that's too close to them that they can't aim downward at, we wouldn't see it from that camera angle.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the exact details of the height and all this stuff, but apparently Omaha Beach wasn't like one big bunker. It was a set of these smaller bunkers, so that's not super realistic in the portrayal of like once they took this hill, they were good. It was
They didn't have the big concrete
no, it was like
there.
a whole bunch of machine gun nests that they had to take, and they took it. We won. But that's not super accurate. And there was actually, if you look at the photos, there's like way less cover. Like it's like there was nowhere to hide, and like those X-shaped things, they're actually backwards. So in the movie, they're supposed to be different. So the Germans thought that the Americans were going to attack at high tide because that's night. So they would come under the cover of night. And so those things are designed not to stop the boat, but to lift the boat onto a mine that's at the end. So then the boat would slide up, explode, easy.
Oh.
They're not meant to be like stopping them from approaching the beach.
Oh.
So that's
I
different.
was wondering about those because I'm like, I assume that they were meant to stop vehicles in some way.
Yeah.
But you're saying there were mines on all of those?
So apparently they're made out of like, so it's different. There's a whole bunch of beaches, there's a whole bunch of situations, but
Yeah.
I was reading like what's wrong with Saving Private Ryan, and they were saying that it's not quite shaped like that. It's wood, and it's meant to slip them up onto,
Right.
and not all of them had mines. Sometimes they would just get stuck.
Oh, I did see.
But it's supposed to be that it's supposed to.
And they were arranged in like lines and not chaotically, apparently.
I saw a wood one when I went to Normandy. I went to Omaha Beach, and there's like basically nothing there anymore because they just have like a monument. But I went to, what's the Canadian one? Sword? Gold? One of those?
Gold or Yukon.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
I think
yeah.
I went to Sword Beach. Or no, I think that was a British one.
The British one is gold. The British one is gold.
I'm in so
and
much
it's
trouble. What's the Canadian one? Juno Beach.
yeah,
That's
sorry.
where I went. Oh man, I'm sorry, Canadians. I went there and I saw like there were wooden ones of that. It was pretty cool.
I've been to Etretat in Normandy.
Yeah.
And it didn't even cross my mind about D-Day stuff was nearby, and I could have
Oh,
gone
man.
on a tour.
That's the only reason I went to Normandy. I was in Paris and I'm like, okay, we're renting a car and driving all the way over there.
How about that cheese they got over there?
Oh, delicious.
Okay, what was the deal? There's a shot where after they win, they get to the top, and Miller is about to get his like mission for the movie. But before that, he's at this little camp, and he observes these other soldiers like pouring coffee and eating sandwiches. What is the idea behind that? What is he observing? What are we supposed to take away from that?
He's showing the soldiers that didn't partake in the fight that now get to camp there because of what the sacrifice of the people that came before. So there's all these, like, I think 2,000 Americans died that day, and he was part of that. But then once they took the beach, now the boats arrive, and then they get to offload, and all the people that were just on the boats waiting now get to have their comfortable coffee and their sandwiches.
Right. It's just an example of like how we just take things for granted.
Totally.
I didn't know if he was looking at the Air Force members doing that because, spoilers, I was in the Army for a very short time, and so I got to absorb some of like the little like caste system and stigmas and stereotypes.
It's spoilers for your life?
Yeah, I guess. Hey, spoilers, guys. Here's some James history. They called the Air Force Chair Force, and everybody knew that it was like that's the comfiest element of the Army to be in because you just like you show up. You fly in your plane. It's like just the most bougie. You never have to like sleep in the dirt. You get to go back to your hotel after the mission.
For sure.
So I thought that he was observing the chair force, like, we got our coffee.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Okay, before we move on from the D-Day, one more thing. We got to just say the effects. We talked about the blood a little bit, but I mentioned the canteen shot.
Yep.
Did you notice the canteen shot, James?
No, what is that?
So there's medics tending to a guy, and one of them has a canteen on his hip, and he gets shot. The canteen gets shot, and then you see water pour out of the canteen, and then blood.
Oh, wow.
So like, that's a practical effects shot that I love because it implies he got shot through his canteen.
That's a nice detail.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nice details in this movie. Like they go to a camp where a lot of people are hurt, and there's a guy sitting beside his wounded buddy, and the guy's while they talk to this guy, his hand is just always in movement because it's just fanning flies off of his buddy's wound.
Oh man, yeah. There's so many just like little. That's the other thing that I think this movie is really good at is having multiple things happen at once. Like there are, and I noticed this I think a bit more because I had subtitles on. There are multiple times in the movie where multiple conversations are happening, and you're kind of supposed to pay more attention to one, but like you're also paying attention to the other one, and it's both important because it's all just experiential. And I think that's another one of the things that really brought me in to the immersion of it and made me feel like I'm actually here. Like it wasn't so clean cut. It wasn't like, all right, we're just following this character and he's going over here and this is what's happening in his story. We're just following this big group of soldiers at some points. And it's just like all of this chaotic stuff is going on and you're just there with them.
Totally. And like the story is so dense and there's so much information provided at all times where like I've seen this movie so many times and there's stuff that like I didn't realize until I did research on it. Like when they get to that camp with like all the wounded soldiers, that downed plane was downed because they had reinforced the plane to protect the brigadier general on there. And so reinforcing this idea of like, is risking the lives of many worth the life of one?
Wait, you didn't notice that?
No,
the whole scene is about that.
I just wasn't paying attention. There was like so much else going on that I'm like,
man.
Meh.
No, that was the first time in the movie where I was like, okay, well, there's the theme for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure other people take different things away from this movie, but for me, that scene, I was like, okay, this movie is about what one man is worth. Their whole mission is to go save one guy, and the question is, should these other guys give their life to save him?
And what's our answer on that?
Let's talk about it.
What do you think?
I think that the whole idea of sending a platoon of men into enemy territory to rescue the last brother out of 4 brothers is just dumb.
Yeah.
It's stupid. And I'm sorry, okay? This might be irreverent, but I think it's dumb. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I'm one of 4 brothers myself. And
think about your mom.
No, if I was the last one surviving and they said we're coming to get you, I'd be like, screw you, no way. I mean, okay, look, I haven't been in a war. Maybe I would be frightened out of my mind and go home. But I'm just saying that from a philosophical, moral standpoint, the logic there does not play out for me.
Yeah. I think I like that it's like appealing to the better angels of our nature. It reminds me of there's a Radio Lab podcast episode about prisoner of war, like internment camps in the U.S. that had Japanese people. A lot of people don't know that there was prisoner camps or work camps in the U.S. during World War II, and it had Japanese people in it, and they were treated really well. They had their own newspaper. They had a nice community built inside it, and at the time, there were a lot of Americans who were like, why the hell are we being so nice to these people?
Right.
There was like a Rush Limbaugh type radio personality back then who was really against it, and
Hitler.
And the rationale was just like, we're not going to sink to their level. The Nazis. Right. We're not going to act like them. We are better than them. Yeah. This is how we're going to act. We're going to show you that our culture is better by treating people who we have power over. It's like that saying, like, character is how you act when no one's looking or when you have nothing to gain. And so to me, that's the logic of this movie, where it's like, we're just going to do the right thing because we don't want to have this one lady experience the pain of having all of her sons die. However, as they say in the movie, we all got moms, and it is kind of shaky.
Yeah, I think the American military is much more pragmatic than that.
Right.
That's and the idea of risking 8 people, one of them like a pretty high-ranking officer, to rescue a private. I don't think so.
That scene with the generals like trying to figure out whether they should send men on the mission or not. I was just like, get out of here. Yeah. What is this? Was this written by an American general? Like
they had to get it approved by the army, and they're like, we need a cup like 50% more propaganda.
Sir, look at this. 3 out of 4 brothers have died. It's like, oh, well, we got to do something about that.
Single tier.
What would Abe Lincoln say?
Let me read a quote that I have in my Bible or whatever. Like,
I think this movie does a pretty good job not falling too far into like Top Gun territory of being like, join the army. But that sequence in particular, and like the whole time your brain's like, they wouldn't be doing this.
I would believe it more if they started to look for Ryan and then it went sideways and they tumbled into being like, well, we can't turn back now.
Yeah.
Right.
And they kind of had to complete
And something that I researched after is that letter that Abraham Lincoln wrote was actually like written in error. Like only 2 of the brothers of 5 died anyway. So like, okay.
It's not important. This is kind of where, the American war propaganda question kind of comes up for me, because obviously, on the one hand, this like World War II was a instance of necessary war against the Nazis. Like they were destroying Europe. And I mean, there's all sorts of arguments to make about how they would eventually been defeated and all that stuff. But like America going into the war at that point was necessary. Like the Allies needed help, and so they are there fighting against this evil. They're fighting against this horrific regime. But at the same time, I don't get that feeling from this movie. I don't get the feeling that their primary goal here is to destroy the Nazis. I know their mission is to save that guy.
When Mellish is standing beside that queue of German soldiers and he's holding up his Star of David and he's like, Juden.
Yeah.
Juden, I'm a Jew.
Well, it's almost like they put in that to be like, oh, remember we're fighting the Nazis. Remember they killed the Jews and stuff. But really what the movie is more concerned with asking is the whole like, what is a man worth question, and secondarily, America. Like the movie starts and ends with a waving American flag.
Sure does.
And
but
then it
it's
fades
bleached.
in and out.
It's kind of bleached out by the sun, though. It's kind of like a gray,
I
washed
don't
out.
know.
The vitality of America has
I'm not
faded.
taking that as a indication that they're like saying that it's morally gray or whatever. It's America.
I was trying to figure out if that was a statement or not, because the first shot, it shows that washed out gray, like old glory kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's like seen better days. And I thought, oh, that looks intentional. And then like 2 shots later, you see that same flag, but just from a different angle.
Yeah.
And it's completely saturated, nice, bright red.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know.
Honestly, that shot and the other instances of kind of it being like America's important, fight for America, is part of why I gave it an 8.75 instead of like a 9.5 or something. Because it's like, I love this movie, and me giving this critique, as I said in the beginning, I love this movie. The whole time I'm on the edge of my seat, I'm engaged. It's an excellent movie watching experience, and I think it says a lot of important things. But it puts a sour taste in my mouth to see that the whole like American thing just like put forward so obviously.
What are examples of this? Come on, you haven't driven this home for me. I don't believe you.
We've already talked about most of them. It's the flag in the beginning and the end, especially at the end. It really just kind of like sours it for me, because I'm like, oh man, what a journey. They sacrificed their lives for this guy. Now earn it. Blah blah blah. He comes back to him in the cemetery, and then we end just like looking at the American flag, which has nothing to do with the fact that this guy was saved or something. Unless they're saying that America.
It does have to do with the whole reason they did the mission, which is what I alluded to a moment ago, where it's like it's the Americanness of this decision, the fact that we're going to go to these extents just to have this lady not experience.
I will hear this argument. Continue.
That's it.
Oh, okay.
That is an American value. It's an American moral. So
no, I think that makes sense.
I think for me, what most leaves a sour taste in my mouth is that this is part of the narrative of rewriting D-Day to be an American-only victory. And that the American films that are about World War II are going to be about America, and they focus on America. And so they've created this exceptionalist idea that World War II was won by America when it was won by like the Allies. And there's like thousands of British, there's thousands of like millions of Russians. And like, I don't think it's the responsibility of every American film ever to be like, hey, the Canadians and the British are also doing this, and hey, the Russians are doing this.
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, we're removing focus from this thing.
Yeah.
But this, for me, I think the sour feeling is the compounded focus on America as the savior of World War II.
Funnily enough, I think that one of the pieces of media that does a great job at giving kind of a fuller picture of all of the parties that were putting an effort in the war is like Call of Duty. Like when you play some of those campaigns, the World War II campaigns, you play as Americans, you play as British, you play as Russians. I think you play as Germans at some point, and it's like I think those are great for giving a full experience. But in this movie, I agree with what you were saying earlier that the story is about this American mission, and I think that if we were to bring in, Canadians and British and French and all that
Russian
stuff,
sequence.
it would just get a little bit.
Well,
more
I mean,
totally.
they talked to a lot of different crews throughout this. If one of those crews was French or something, it would have been cool.
And even like
then you could use Upman more.
Maybe-
Or
maybe-
Upman.
even the detail of like those boats that they would have ridden on would have been crewed by British people, and they were British boats.
Really?
But, yeah.
Oh.
And so like when the guy speaks and he's clearly American, and like that's a little detail they could have been like, oh yeah, the British participated in this invasion.
Sure.
And I think that it just
Yeah.
adds to this kind of underlying feeling of like America.
I'm 100% with you there. And maybe they could have like met up with some French resistance members or
Totally. Something.
One thing I think this movie does really well is making you feel that all the side characters are the stars of their own movie.
Right.
This movie could just be Upham and his arc or Ryben. Also, this character's name is Ryben, and they're looking for Ryan. They could have not had another white guy with a similar
They say
name.
Ryben or Reben?
I'm pretty sure it's Ryben.
I was reading the subtitles. I wasn't paying.
Yeah. Although,
bad
but man, that's awesome. And the way it's so efficient, the way that they resolve Ryben's arc is just so he was the guy who the whole time was like, "This is a stupid, bad decision, waste of time. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be risking all our lives for this one dude."
Right.
And then they gets there, and then Ryan doesn't even want to come with them, and he's like, "Why did we even do this?" And then it's all
Our names are so close.
It's all resolved when the two of them are taking cover, and Ryben just looks over at Private Ryan and just has like just a look on his face. Nothing is said, and just with the look, it's like, we're a team now.
Yeah.
I got your back now.
Yeah, now we're brothers.
It doesn't matter what happened. That was just a great moment.
Totally. I like that character's arc where, he is kind of the one that's going to step away. And I love that sequence, I love that moment with Tom Hanks revealing that he's the school teacher.
Oh.
And like everything's going to shit. Like the second in command has this pistol pointed at Ryben. And like everyone's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And he's like,
I smell a monologue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently that monologue was way longer. And Tom Hanks was like, my character wouldn't say these things and wouldn't say it this long. And so they condensed it. And it still feels long.
He knows that his students have short attention spans.
But I love that detail. And like it really kind of contextualizes because you've only seen Tom Hanks as this like badass war guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, he like teaches kids back home. And like you can
Oh,
imagine
he's
him.
Tom Hanks.
I love that movie. I think I wrote that Captain Miller is a true leader. He knows exactly when to play that card in his deck. He has the card of this is what I do back home, and they all want it. All his men want it, and he knows exactly when to use it at the moment when his unit is in the most chaos.
And it's also really good writing because it's cool to give characters quirks, like that Paul Giamatti character who has like bad ankles at that one moment. He's not much of a character, but this quirk that we don't know what this guy's occupation was or where he's from, it seems like an innocuous quirk, and it's cool to have quirks, but they work the best when they have harmony with the story. And then the fact that he turns that into a moment that's like kind of saves the day. It's like, mwah.
And it's even cooler to have quarks.
Up, down, charm, and strange. Top and bottom.
Thank you.
Funny. Yeah, Paul Giamatti's ankles. What do you guys think of that moment when he like goes to tie a shoe and he knocks the wood over and it knocks the wall over and then they're all pointing their guns at each other?
That was
feels a little.
hokey.
My part of me is like I like it because like war is so random and chaotic, where it's like that, but it's also a weird movie moment.
I did like it because I was like, oh man, that really just underlines the insanity of like trying to fight your way through these towns. You have no idea whether there's going to be a German soldier on the other side of that wall. And turns out there are, but it seems a little crazy that they go in there and there's a guy stationed there. I'm assuming that building had kind of been like cleared because they go in there and they're like thunder and the guy's like flash and they're like, okay, that's how we know this area is safe. So we go in there. It's like, what? They both chose the same building as like a command building. It's very, very confusing.
Totally, and it's just convenient that the other people show up at just the right moment to save them. Like there was no cost to that moment.
Yeah, I'm like,
I think
no.
they could have handled that
as
a
soon
little
as the
better.
first shot is fired, everyone's guns are going off.
Yeah.
Everyone is dead in that courtyard. That
But
seemed
none
to-
of the Americans got hurt at all.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What's up with that?
That was pretty dumb.
Yeah,
I gotta say.
I have a few nitpicks, and so this movie's like known for its shaky cam, and I think it works really well. Steven Spielberg didn't storyboard this movie at all. He just wanted to be there authentically in the place, and so that participatory feeling you get watching this movie works. But there's sometimes where the camera's a little too shaky, and it shouldn't be. Like there's when the first half track comes, and they're in the bush, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, get down!" and they get down. Right before that, there's a bunch of close-ups of people like walking, and it's like long shots, but the camera is like really shaky. It's like it's like hard to follow.
Yeah.
And I found that really distracting. We talked a little bit about the filter being a little too aggressive for the vertical lines. I did not like that a lot of times. The last shot with Upham, there's the sky, and the sky's just bright enough that it triggers kind of the vertical line effect. And so like half the frame is just like extended with these vertical lines. And I found there's a few times of that because they removed the filter. It just was distracting.
Are these things, do you think that they're a product of the time, or do you think that they are failures?
It's a combo. I mean, like
Mistakes.
now we would stabilize those shots a little bit more, and we would have a better idea of what that filtering effect would be, and so we could kind of mitigate it. But my bigger problems start to be like in the sequence before the final sequence when they're preparing for the final showdown, and they're like home aloneing the town.
Yeah, booby trap.
They do a sequence of setting it up, and then they kind of just stop. And then when they're like, "Okay, the Germans are coming," they keep going, and I'm like, why wouldn't they have finished before taking their break? Like they do like their final preparation before they come, and that bothered me. Where like,
really?
okay, this is for the purpose of re-upping the pace before we get into the action
maybe-
and like reintroducing.
I don't
that
remember
level of
what it is
tension.
they do, but I can imagine things like the axle grease on the sticky bombs needs to be wet or something.
Yeah.
But there's things like they put the line across the road and he covers it with dirt,
Well, I
and like
figured that was
they are
because-
filling the Molotov cocktails, and like that it serves the purpose of the movie for preparing the audience
Right.
for what's about to happen.
Yeah.
But in the context of like soldiers that are like fighting for their life,
Yeah.
I don't think they would have like stopped and listened to Edith Piaf
I figured they.
where there's Molotov cocktails to be filled.
I figured that the rolling the line across the way, the street, was probably because they didn't want to accidentally like trip it or something. So like do that right before they come. You know, I don't know.
But it's not like stepping on it's not going to fire. They still have to put it on.
Oh right,
the thing
that's just
and
a
then-
fuse.
Well, I found out what those blimps on D-Day were.
Yeah, so after D-Day, they get to the top of the hill and they look out after like all the guys have arrived, and there's all these like weird blimps attached to crap. I was
Yeah.
like, what is that? Aren't blimps German? What the fuck are those
What?
for?
Blimps?
So
No, I think they're like.
they're not blimps. They're what the point is to elevate those metal cables. They're like thick steel cables, and it's to prevent low flying aircraft from getting through. So ships would fire those off, so that planes that would be low flying and strafing on these boats would have to like dodge them and just would be so disincentivized of doing it because it's too dangerous that they just would protect the boat.
Right.
Oh, so planes would come and buzz the beach and just take out all those resources.
Oh
Yeah.
man, Dunkirk.
So they just put up these like barriers that you'd have to just like zig and zag through.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's too
that's-
dangerous.
That's pretty cool. I thought you were going to say it was something to do with communications. Like they're just lifting the internet into the sky.
They're bringing lightning
What about the
down
internet?
to run the radios.
What about that scene when Vin Diesel, of all people who's in this movie,
Yeah.
takes that damn French kid?
Idiot.
It's a stupid.
Okay,
scene.
that family sucks. I love how the little girl, when it's all over, the little girl just slaps the shit out of her
Yeah,
dad.
yeah. It's like what? Obviously, what are you thinking?
She's traumatized.
What do you
for
think
life.
these guys are gonna do?
And then I love how we talked about in the last episode. You weren't here, Riley, but in the Alien one, it's a horror movie. We're talking about how often in those types of movies, there's like sins that the people do in Act 1 that they have to atone for later.
Right.
And so Vin Diesel's character dies right after committing the sin of not following orders.
Right. The sin of trying to save a child.
She looks like my niece.
Can't do
it.
Sorry, Sarge. Like,
Yeah.
no, idiot.
I think they could have played up that sequence a little bit more. Like in so many war films, when there's a sniper, there's always. I mean, I don't want this line of dialogue, but there's like they shot him to draw us out. Don't go get him. They're trying to draw us out because like you shoot the person as a sniper, and then he's screaming, and you keep them alive so that his teammates want to go and save him.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you shoot him when they go out in the open.
Right. You
so,
didn't like
so
that?
you want that, but you don't want that?
I want more of that because they kind of do that a little bit where the
I want
people are
that
like,
same
I got to go
scene.
get him. But I found like there was no tension in that scene. And maybe it's just because I've rewatched this movie so
There's
much.
lots of tension because the
Yeah.
sniper is looking at him through, like, is he going to finish him off?
But that's at the end of the scene. There's like a whole minute before we see the sniper's perspective. And I love that. I love when like he's kind of scanning and you can not really see where the soldiers are. And it's only at the last minute when it's already too late that the Christian sniper has
Jackson.
Jackson.
has spotted him and shoots him in another act that defies the physics of bullets.
What?
Because, okay, so if you were shooting up at that far, the bullet's going to arc. So he has to aim above. And so if it arcs above, it couldn't go through the thing. It would have to, like, land above. So it just
It could have gone through still.
No.
Whatever.
Okay, but bullets arc, but he wasn't that far away.
No, I don't know.
Well, here's two things I like.
What do you mean? You're just giving up.
It doesn't matter. It's like such a stupid
I get
nitpick.
what you're saying, but I think it could have worked. Totally.
Well, here's two things I really like about that scene. Number one, I like that the German sniper's face is like sympathetic. He doesn't look like this cold killing machine.
Totally.
He's like, oh god, this sucks. And number two, when they get the little girl, and now the stakes are raised because they get the little girl, they're in their custody, better or worse, and then Vin Diesel's character is dead, and then now they're taking cover from a sniper, and this little girl's out in the open. I'm just like, shit.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a very tense scene. I mean, even having seen it before, I don't remember that scene much except for the shooting the sniper through the thing.
Yeah, that's pretty
through
iconic.
Through the what do you call it?
What does he shoot him through?
Scope.
The scope.
Oh,
And it
that's
goes
what you're
clean.
talking
Yeah, it
about.
goes clean through a
Yeah.
scope.
I just remember that shot because I was like, oh, heck yeah.
I haven't calculated the arc myself. I just saw
That's on
a
my
video.
highlight reel.
I saw a video.
I haven't guys, I haven't calculated the trajectory.
It's a
Speaking
parabola.
of Vin Diesel, one thing that kind of breaks my immersion in this movie is the sheer amount of celebrities that show up. And a lot of them, it's not the movie's fault. Like Matt Damon was a nobody, and he was cast before Good Will Hunting was even a thing. And
Really?
so he was cast, they shot it, Good Will Hunting made him a superstar. And so that kind of, like Steven Spielberg had cast him specifically because he was a nobody.
But every like sergeant or captain
Yeah,
they
like
run into, like Ted
Danson.
Danson,
I
and
know.
Guillemot's in there, that other guy.
Those
gives
ones
him the mission.
totally remove my immersion a little bit.
Really?
Totally.
I don't know. I think I kind of liked it because I was like, oh, yeah, he's in this movie. But I think instead of breaking my immersion, I think it just kind of it made me appreciate the movie more as maybe like a vehicle for kickstarting some of these guys' careers. I know Ted Danson was already a celebrity or whatever, but it's got to be one of Paul Giamatti's first movies.
He'd done stuff.
Ones.
Nathan Fillion had done nothing. So he's
Nathan
someone.
Fillion.
Who's he?
He's the first fake Ryan.
Yeah, he's the
right?
fake Ryan.
Yeah, I
Oh.
was like, is that Nathan Fillion? But I didn't bother looking it up.
He does a pretty good job, and I can see why he got cast after that.
Does that mean my brothers are okay?
Yeah, I hated that.
Yeah, I like
That
how
was
he's
so
like
bad.
preoccupied with like, but you can't know for sure they're okay. And
Yeah.
That felt real.
that actually made sense.
That's impossible. My brother's in grade school.
Yeah, and they're just like, oh,
This movie has no business being as funny as it is.
oh my god,
It's so funny.
It's so funny.
And it's perfect because all of the moments of comedy are just like it's so perfectly entwined, and I think it really gives you a sense of how they are dealing with death every single day. They are literally living in hell, and they have to find a way to not break down, and that's how they do it. They make jokes. I think that is highlighted. And it goes perfectly with the theme in the scene where they are going through all the dog tags.
yeah.
They're like, all right, let's see if we got our guy here. And they're like basically playing around with the dog tags like they're poker chips in front of all the young paratroopers, the fresh recruits who...
And that medic character is always there to remind people that.
Yeah.
Who is that guy? Phoebe's brother from France. That guy's always there to be like, guys, this is serious.
Yeah.
He's the most empathetic.
Giovanni Ribisi plays medic Wade. Yeah.
Wade.
Man, when he dies, the way that he bleeds out, that
It's so
was
irritating.
It's so I don't know. That one feels real to me.
Oh, no, it definitely does feel real, but I think it bothered me as someone with first aid training in the past where it's
They're
like...
just wiping it away.
They're just wiping the blood away. I'm like, what are you doing?
And then
Put pressure on it.
say, put pressure.
Yeah,
put
later
pressure.
they put pressure
And
on. If
it's
they put
too late.
pressure on first thing,
They might
instead of just be like, oh, get rid of this blood.
Yeah, but the way the blood's coming out and like they lift him up to get the exit wound.
Yeah.
That was one of those like, oh gosh,
That
that's
one
a
was-
human who's dying, and I
And
hate
that's
this.
rough. They're like, tell us what we can do. Tell us what we have. What we
Give
should
them
do
the
to
And they
save
set
you.
up the morphine thing. There's just like a quick shot earlier when they're at that camp where the guy's waving the flies.
Yeah.
There's a quick shot there where he like punctures this little white, I guess it's a morphine needle capsule thing into a guy's leg, and there's
Yeah.
like no context.
Yeah.
And then we see it again here. Like, oh,
That's how they do it, man.
I love those little foreshadowings.
And even him at the end, we saw those guys on D-Day like saying "Mama" as they're like bleeding out on the beach, and he says "Mama."
Yeah.
What's up with that? They did that in Shawshank Redemption too. Remember that
They say
the
that
new
even
fish gets there.
Even
That
the
felt
biggest,
less real in
Even the
Shawshank.
toughest guy will cry for his mama when he's dying or something.
I don't know if I would.
Well, you don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. Hey, did you guys know the word defilade before this movie?
No.
I was like, maybe I didn't play enough video
What does it
games.
mean, like cover?
Yeah, it's a cover where you can't be seen or shot at
Right.
by an enemy. They kept saying it at the beginning, go get that there's defilade down there. And
Yeah.
I thought it was the guy's name at first, but I had to like
Is that like
pause it.
C4?
If I didn't have subtitles on, I probably never would have even noticed
I
it.
didn't pick up on
Yeah.
it.
No, I love this. I love subtitles.
I think my favorite
for
moment
this movie.
of comedy in the movie is when the second in command is like kind of crossing the line of fire. There's the German right there, and he's got like nothing. His gun jams or something, and he has to take his helmet off, and they throw it at each other, and then he like shoots him with the pistol, and the other guy shows up, and he has to throw his pistol.
Yeah.
I love because it's funny. It's like kind of a comedic moment, but it's also like, no, these people are fighting for their life.
You thought that was funny?
I think it's kind of goofy when they're throwing their helmets at each other.
I didn't see. Okay, I see what you're saying, but I think I didn't. That was more like a moment of desperation to me. I guess you could. Maybe if I was in a different state of mind, I would have found it funny. But I was so immersed that I was just like, this is so crazy that you run up to somebody, and I think especially in that final battle, there's so many moments where the American soldiers and the German soldiers come face to face, and they have to contend with the fact that these are men. These are just other men. These are just other humans that they're dealing with. And the captive scene is also great for that, where it's like, in other circumstances, you guys might be friends or whatever. It's like, and you go up and you're feet away from this guy. What do you do? And there's another that scene where they knock down the wall is another scene where they're just like so close. Yeah. There are moments like that just take me out of it. Take me out of my current reality for a second. I'm just like, man, can you imagine just like being this, like as far away from as I am from you, and just like one of us has to kill each other.
Do you think that they could have played that up more in the scene with Mellish hand-to-hand battling that German? When he's losing, he's about to get stabbed, he says, we should stop. But do you think...
He said, we should stop?
He said, let's stop.
Oh,
let's stop fighting.
Okay, yeah.
Because, he's losing
I thought
already.
I thought I just heard him saying, stop.
But maybe that scene, instead of them really fighting, should have been them appraising the situation and deciding, no one else can see us right now.
Yeah.
Let's just fight each other from farther away. This is a lot easier when it's just bullets. But it's just like hand-to-hand combat, melee to the death is like really intense. And do you want to just do that for this abstract notion of nation? I mean, he's Jewish, okay? Jews are getting killed.
Yeah.
So it's not abstract for him, really.
Right.
Okay?
I think
I get it.
I think we kind of had a moment like that where after he kills Mellish, the German soldier comes back down the stairs and he sees Upham there, just in the fetal position. And he just kind of is like,
by.
all right, I'm going to leave you. I'm just going to walk by. I'll maybe get you next time.
He's like, I've done this before.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah. And that's also, that's another reason why I didn't really judge him there. Because I was like, this German, the enemy saw him in this state. And I think he saw a human who it was just like, it was too much. Yeah. He just rage quit for a second.
Yeah, no one knows the how bad it is more than they do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I love that German character. I like it when he's desperately trying to negotiate for his life, and he just
sings the national anthem.
Like, Betty Boop, that lady, great gams,
man,
and sings the national
sad.
anthem, and it's like you really feel it, and like, oh man,
yeah, anyone would do that. Hey,
At the same time, him
I'd be
doing
like
all that stuff-
Autobahn, Volkswagen.
Yeah, I feel like
Schnitzel.
ironically, I think that
all I
the German soldier saying all those things made me. It like did the opposite. I was kind of like, oh, you're
He's
maybe
pathetic.
a weirdo. Like instead of like humanizing him and being like, no, this is a good man. He just like he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. He's following orders. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, but how can he communicate?
No, I know, but for some reason, him like saying all this stuff like, oh, Betty Boop, blah, 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 that's American, right? Americans are just stupid. I'm like, well, screw you, dude.
No, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think he's trying to say that it's stupid. I think he's just trying to like the only things he has any cultural understanding of. Because I think if he was like, no, me family have.
Yeah.
I have children.
I know the word, but I say
Is
it.
he a freshly unfrozen caveman?
Yeah.
Me family kill T-Rex. One little tidbit I wanted to bring up was the moment when Reiben is threatening to leave, right? Because they let the captive go, and he's like, "This is bullshit. I'm done with this mission. I'm out of here. I'm not doing this." And they're trying to get him not to leave, and eventually, he plays the school teacher card, and he does this whole speech about we're on this mission. But I forget exactly what the moral of the story is, but somehow it brings people together. And then Reiben's like, "Okay, yeah, all right, I'll stick together." And then when they get to Ryan is like, it's like you're getting a get out of jail free card. Like, you can come home, man. Like, there you go. It's easy as that. You just have to say yes. And he says no. And I thought that was like a really interesting, like not juxtaposition, but reversal of Reiben's decision. He wanted to leave, and Ryan is like, "No, I'm not leaving." Wow. Okay, that was a little violent, but yeah.
Perfect for this movie. Do you guys think there'll ever be a war movie like Saving Private Ryan again?
What do you mean, like Saving Private Ryan?
I don't know. Like, it's been done. It exists, and it's really damn good. So if you're gonna top it, you kind of have to like take it another angle and just change it. And maybe Dunkirk is an example of that.
Do you mean one of it just quality like that?
I think just pure war film that kind of keeps it real simple. Because you're right. Like, Dunkirk is maybe as good, if not nearly as good, but it kind of needs to have this more postmodern take on war. It can't be as like sincere. Not sincere is the right word, but like genuine. You know what I mean?
I think it has to be either a conflict we haven't seen or a perspective we haven't seen. Like what's the one that Spike Lee just did?
The Five Bloods.
Yeah, the Five Bloods. Like,
oh god,
that would be sweet. Like, just other voices that we haven't seen. Something.
Did you guys
like
see that movie?
No.
It's just as shocking.
Oh yeah.
And it lulls you in with like good times. We're having a good time.
I think if they were going to make a movie that I would respect as much as this movie, Dunkirk, I don't enjoy Dunkirk as much. Like, I think I respect it more because it's kind of like, it's not just a war movie. It's like it's more artfully done, and there's like clear themes and but it's a different thing for me. I don't think it's quite the same as like these kind of like down in the mud, nitty gritty, like putting you in the midst of warfare like that. I think that one takes more of a sort of traditional storytelling approach. But my thing about this movie, I think would be that a modern movie would have to do is to, as you say, maybe take more of a postmodern like view on it. Whereas this one, I want to say it prevents an unflinching look at like the horror of war and like lets you decide. It lets the viewer like take a position, but it doesn't do that. It takes a position of America. Like the people, I think I kind of talked about this a bit, but like to me it seems like the soldiers in this movie aren't fighting against the Nazis. They're fighting for America. And that that stayed with me through the whole time. So yeah.
That's totally fair.
Oh, you got 1917.
It's not as good.
No. But
No.
it's good.
It's good. It's very good.
But what you're talking about, Riley, that reminds me of the Kubrick one. God, what the fuck is
Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket, thank you. I was like, could see the cover, the Born to Kill thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that's kind of more like...
Right. And I was almost expecting more of kind of like a condemnation of the violence here. But it doesn't, it just kind of shows it to you, and it's like, this is what it is, America.
Well, it shows you the trauma, like,
Yeah.
with the old man at the end and all that.
It's interesting because the movie itself is very subjective. It's very much from the perspective
Yes.
of someone in the movie, but I think it's like, it takes a stance, but it's kind of a little bit removed, more from an objective position of
Right.
kind of like viewing the morality and the values that are on display. And I love it.
I love it also.
It's a great movie.
It's
Well,
great.
everybody, guess what? Guess what we're going to do next week? Spider-Man.
What?
Or Thor.
Spider-Man Homecoming. Well, I think we should do Thor the month later because Thor's closer to Infinity War in the timeline.
Sure.
Every month, every fourth episode is going to be MCU. And
Okay.
then we're going to do that all the way through Endgame.
That's fun.
And guess what? That 1 week after the Endgame episode, which is going to be like in October, or 1 month after that, it's going to be Black Widow.
Ooh.
Whoa. Which I'm like sort of stoked for. Thank you.
Whatever.
Blade's
not-
the only one I'm excited
Well,
about.
it's just kind of weird. I feel like it's weird to get stoked for movies that don't appear to
A
be part of like.
spin-off.
It's a spin-off, and it's like going back in time to during the Infinity arc or before. So it's kind of like,
Are they going to de-age her?
I'm not stoked for this.
I doubt it. They're gonna. It's a passing off the torch movie too. Like there's gonna be a new Black Widow by the end of it.
Okay.
What's her name? Florence Pugh, the girl from Little Women,
A
is gonna be the new
Black
Black
Widow.
Are
Yeah.
other people excited about this? Let us know on Twitter or by email. We are at Carpool Critics on Twitter and carpoolcriticspodcast@gmail.com.
What a great email.
Hit us up. Also, if you get your friends to watch this, take a picture, a social distance. Just let us know that you got a friend to listen, then we'll like you.
And maybe we'll do something special.
I'll do something special for you. I'll get my friend to call you.
And check out my Last of Us 2 video.
Oh, yeah, go check out David's gaming channel. Surprise with an exclamation mark gaming.
An interrobang. Surprise? Surprise!
Surprise with a Z.
Yeah.
Like
Prize.
on top of a prize. Exclamation mark.
It was gonna be a lot more complicated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye. Love you.